Okay, imagine this 2 days before finals. Your dad sells your laptop, the one with your entire thesis on it, just to buy your brother a gaming rig. Yeah, total betrayal, right? That's exactly what happened to Faith. And here's the thing. What starts as a desperate scramble to survive explodes into a wild story of revenge, resourcefulness, and ultimate triumph. I gotta ask, where in the world are you watching from right now? Stick around, because you're not gonna want to miss a single twist of this journey. It was for the kind of quiet that usually meant the house was asleep, but my brain was already buzzing with code, mapping out the final optimizations for my thesis. I swung my legs out of bed, eyes burning, stomach twisting with that familiar mix of adrenaline and nausea. 3 hours of sleep a night for the past 2 weeks, fueled by instant coffee and sheer panic, had left me a mess, but I welcomed it. It meant I was close. So close, I shuffled toward the little alcove off the kitchen we called the study. Though, honestly, it was more like a storage closet crammed with Tupperware and old tax returns. My laptop, my lifeline, was right there, or at least it should have been. I reached for the power button. Nothing. Just smooth, cold wood. My brain tripped. Wait, no. My hand swiped the desk. Empty. My heart started hammering. I patted the floor. Nothing. I retraced every step of the past 24 hours in my head. No. I hadn't moved it. The weight, the bulk, it wasn't going anywhere by accident. I flicked on the overhead light, wincing at the yellow glare, and froze. The desk was bare. Not just the laptop, but the cooling pad, the external mouse, the power brick gone. Panic clawed at my chest. I called out, voice cracking. Mom, Dad. No answer. Of course not. It was for a mim, but panic isn't polite. I ran into the living room, checking every surface, the kitchen counter, the dining table empty. And then I saw it. In the corner, where Tyler usually sprawled on the couch. A tower of boxes, sleek, black. Red accented boxes, a curved monitor, a glass-sided PC case, a mechanical keyboard. My stomach dropped. I spun. My dad was there. Frank, scratching his stomach, eyes puffy from sleep, looking annoyed. What are you screaming about? It's 4 o'clock, he said, like this was all my fault. Where's my computer? I stammered. Dad, my thesis is on it. Finals in 2 days. He yawned, stretching, still not really looking at me. Oh, that. Yeah, we need to talk about that. My stomach twisted. Talk about what? He took a step closer, hands trembling. He finally made eye contact. I sold it, he said. Casual, like he was telling me the trash had been taken out. My mouth open, closed, opened again. No sound came out. You, what? My voice cracked. I sold it, he repeated. Yesterday afternoon, pawn shop gave me a decent rate. Added that to savings. Boom, Tyler's setup is sorted. I stared. My mind refused to compute. My laptop, my thesis, my work, all gone. Just gone. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. I couldn't even breathe. I couldn't speak. I just stood there. Then the words tumbled out in a strangled whisper. You wiped it, he shrugged, walking toward the kitchen, casually starting the coffee maker. Standard procedure before selling electronics. Don't look at me like that. You're smart. You'll figure it out. Figure it out. My entire academic life, sold like a used toaster. I pressed my hands to my chest, feeling the poison of heartbreak spread. Hours, Sleepless nights, years of proving myself, all vanished because my dad thought my ambition was a joke and Tyler needed a toy. I looked at the tower of boxes again. Easy $2,000 worth of tech. My laptop, my workstation. Gone. I couldn't even cry. My mind was spinning, frantic. The next hour blurred. I threw on clothes, fingers fumbling, heart hammering, breath coming in shallow gasps. I had to try the pawn shop. Maybe, just maybe. It wasn't wiped yet. Maybe Frank hadn't secured it properly. My hands shook as I grabbed the keys and ran out the door. He didn't even glance up from his phone. The early morning air hit me like a slap. My Honda Civic barely feeling like my own. I replayed the conversation in my head. It's his turn, Frank had said. His turn. What did that even mean? Tyler had been handed everything. Tutors, camps, cars, bail money. And me, I got a roof, a lecture, and now, nothing. I arrived at the pawn shop before it opened, parked in the empty lot. The cold metal of the steering wheel pressing into my palms. My heartbeat was deafening. 5, the sun barely stirring. I tried to imagine hope, any glimmer, but it was thin. When the owner finally unlocked the gate, I practically stumbled inside. My dad sold a laptop here yesterday. I gasped. Heavy black workstation. Please, I'll pay double, just tell me it's here. The man, chewing on a toothpick, glanced at me, unimpressed. Sold it an hour after it came in. Some kid needed parts for a server build. It's gone. Sweetheart. I swallowed. Did you wipe it? Company policy, he said, tapping a sign. All data destroyed. Just like that, my thesis. 3 days of unsynced code, gone. My chest ached, hollow. My mind spun through every lost hour, every coffee-fueled panic session, every sacrifice, the small alcove, the study, the cramped hours of pre-dawn work they'd been rendered meaningless. I drove home, a ghost of myself, heartbeat heavy, stomach twisting, replaying Frank's shrug. Figure it out. And suddenly, I did. Not yet, but I would. They couldn't take the gears turning in my mind, the ambition, the drive. I had lost a machine, but not me. Walking back into the house, Tyler was sprawled, gaming, entirely unaware. The tower humming, lights glowing. Mom brought him toast, cooing. The household scene, so normal, so casual it made the betrayal sting even sharper. I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. You knew, he shrugged. Needed the upgrade, Tyler said, eyes glued to the screen. And there it was, the full picture. My parents had not just sold my laptop. They had weaponized it to keep me trapped, to sabotage me, to make sure I couldn't finish, couldn't succeed, couldn't escape. I felt cold clarity wash over me. They hadn't taken the machine to help Tyler. They had taken it to stop me. My ambition had always been a threat. Every scholarship, every A, every late-night coding session, they had resented it. They wanted me small. They wanted me dependent. They thought they could cage me in their world. And yet, in that moment of betrayal, I realized something else. I wasn't trapped. My mind, my code, the architecture of my thesis had lived inside me. And no pawn shop, no tower of gaming boxes, no casual shrug of a father could erase that. I could rebuild. I would rebuild. And someday, I'd make them understand the scale of what they'd tried to steal from me. But for now, all I could feel was the raw, nauseating sting of betrayal, the disbelief, the frustration, the quiet, simmering fury that refused to settle. I had lost everything tangible, yes, but my resourcefulness, my determination that was untouchable. And that thought, strange as it felt in the thick, early morning air, gave me a flicker of hope amid the wreckage of my panic. The drive to the pawn shop felt like moving through a fog of panic. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly it left impressions in my palms. The streets were empty, the pale dawn light casting long, blurry shadows across the pavement. My mind kept replaying the conversation with Dad over and over. "Figure it out," he'd said. "Figure it out." He sold my laptop, my thesis, all of it, and expected me to just cope. Every red traffic light felt like a countdown to doom. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone following, some phantom of my lost work, some cruel, cosmic reminder that I was too late. I could feel my stomach twisting, nausea roiling through me like liquid fire. Coffee, sleep deprivation, pure terror, it had all fused into this unbearable pressure in my chest. I shook my head, trying to clear it, muttering, "It has to be there. It has to be there." The pawn shop finally came into view, a nondescript building with peeling paint and a flickering sign. Empty lot, no cars, of course. No cars. It was 5 Why would anyone be here at this hour? I parked and sat, my breath shallow, repeating the mantra in my head, maybe. Just maybe. Dad was lying. Maybe it wasn't wiped yet. Maybe. It was a long shot. I knew it. But hope was all I had. The minutes stretched, thick and suffocating, until the owner finally unlocked the gate. I practically stumbled inside, words tumbling out before I could think. "My dad, Frank, he sold a laptop here yesterday. Heavy workstation. Please. I need to buy it back. I'll pay double." The man glanced up, chewing on a toothpick, unimpressed. He typed slowly at his register. "Frank, yeah. Came in yesterday. Brought a heavy workstation." "Yes. Is it here?" My heart stuttered. "Yes," I whispered, barely daring to breathe. "Nope," he said, his voice calm, almost cruel in its simplicity. "Sold it an hour after it came in. Some kid needed parts for a server build. It's gone. Sweetheart, gone." The words slammed into me like a physical punch. "Did you wipe it?" I asked. Voice trembling. He tapped a sign on the wall. "Company policy. All data destroyed upon receipt. Liability." My chest constricted. 3 days of unsynced code. 3 nights of caffeine-fueled obsession. My thesis. The culmination of 4 years of work. Completely gone. And Dad's smug shrug flashed in my mind, the casual way he told me to figure it out. My hands were shaking so badly, I gripped the counter for support. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. I wanted to collapse into the floor and never move again. But mostly, I felt hollow, numb. The world seemed muted, gray, as if someone had drained all the color from it. Every sensory detail, peeling paint on the walls, the faint smell of old carpeting, the harsh fluorescent lights only reminded me that this was real. It had happened. I couldn't code my way out of it. Not here, not now. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to force tears, but it was too raw, too sharp, and they wouldn't come. My mind raced through every option, every possible recovery method. Cloud backups, not synced. External drives, gone. Rewriting the code from memory, impossible in 3 days. Impossible with finals looming. I could feel my body trembling. Exhaustion mixing with panic, creating a cocktail that made every thought feel heavier than the last. I stepped back from the counter, tried to breathe, then to focus, but the hopelessness was suffocating. I could hear the distant hum of traffic outside, the faint creak of the door swinging closed, and it all felt like a cruel reminder that life was moving forward while my future had been sold for some gaming rig in the corner of the living room. The weight of the loss pressed down on me physically. Shoulders slumped, stomach churning, eyes stinging. I finally left the pawn shop. The sun was rising now, weak and pale, illuminating the lot and the empty streets like some mockery of hope. Every step to my car felt like moving through molasses, each breath shallow and sharp. And yet, even in that despair, a small, stubborn flicker burned inside me. I clenched my fists, biting back tears and curses. They thought they could break me. They thought a laptop, a thesis, a few nights of coding could stop me. But my mind, my work, my ambition, they hadn't touched, not yet. As I started the engine, the streets blurred past, early morning air rushing in through the cracked windows, cold against my face. I kept repeating it under my breath, almost a mantra: I will rebuild. I have to. The laptop was gone, the work lost, but the knowledge, the architecture, the code, it all lived in me. And I would find a way, somehow, I would figure it out. Back in the house, the scene hit me all at once. Tyler sprawled on the couch, gaming, completely at ease, while my parents fussed over him like he was the crown prince. Mom delivering toast, Dad patting him on the shoulder. And me, I'd been treated like a temporary tenant in my own home. The realization was sharp, cold. This wasn't just about a laptop or a thesis. It was a system, a pattern of favoritism designed to keep me small, dependent, scrambling for scraps while Tyler got everything handed to him. Every A, every scholarship, every hour I spent working or coding had been overshadowed, resented, or erased. And now, this ultimate act of sabotage, selling my laptop 2 days before finals, was just the final proof. I felt my chest tighten, a mixture of anger, exhaustion, and clarity washing over me. I wasn't staying here anymore. This house, these people, this environment, it was toxic. Staying meant being trapped, being punished for wanting more, for wanting to succeed. I needed out. I needed distance, perspective, and space to rebuild without interference. And then my eyes fell on the manila envelope tucked under my mattress. My heart skipped a beat. Nova Systems. The acceptance letter. Seattle. Live-in residency. Equipment. Stipend. A year to build. To create. To finally prove myself. My pulse quickened. This was it. My ticket out. I picked up the envelope, feeling the weight of possibility in my hands. No more scrambling under their thumb. No more working in a study that was really just a closet. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the envelope, mind racing. I could leave right now, disappear from their control, take the opportunity I had earned without asking for permission, without justification. The thought sent a thrill through me, tempered by a pang of guilt and disbelief that it had come to this. I started packing, my hands methodical, almost robotic at first, then gradually loosening as the reality settled in. Jeans, a couple of shirts, toiletries, the acceptance letter, my backpack, the essentials. No sentimental clutter, no books I couldn't live without, no attachments to a house that had never truly been mine. Each item I packed felt like shedding layers of the old life, leaving behind their control, their manipulation, their petty judgments. I zipped the bag shut, light and manageable, and felt a rush of relief, almost dizzying in its intensity. I looked around my room once, noting the emptiness, the cold sterility, and then, without a backward glance, I stepped into the hallway. Dad appeared, holding a can of soda, his smug smirk in place. Going to the library, he asked, the voice dripping with condescension. I kept my eyes forward, calm, steady. "I won't be late," I said. He didn't notice the hiking boots, the backpack, the envelope hidden inside. He didn't see me at all, and that's exactly what I wanted. I walked out the front door, the sunlight blinding, warm against my skin, carrying with me only what I truly needed: determination, clarity, and the tools to reclaim my life. Every step down the driveway felt like a reclamation, a tiny act of defiance and liberation. The past, the betrayal, the unfairness, all of it stayed behind. In the empty rooms, the humming gaming tower, the unspoken rules of the household. I didn't walk to the car. I didn't need to. I just moved forward. Each footfall a statement: I am more than this house, more than their manipulations. I was free, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I exhaled fully, feeling the tightness in my chest ease, the nausea fade, and the sharp, cold clarity transform into something powerful. I had a plan, a destination, and a future waiting. The Nova Systems acceptance letter wasn't just paper. It was a promise, a lifeline, a way to turn everything they had taken from me into fuel for what I was about to build. My heart pounded with anticipation, but also a steady confidence. I wasn't running in fear. I was moving, deliberately, intentionally, toward the life I deserved. And as the house receded behind me, I realized something profound. I wasn't just leaving. I was reclaiming my story. For the first time, fully and completely, I was choosing myself. And that choice, simple, radical, terrifying, felt like the first real breath of freedom I'd ever taken. Arriving in Seattle, the city hit me like a wall of possibility and chaos all at once. The air smelled different: salt, rain, exhaust, ambition, and I could feel it buzzing in my veins. Nova Systems was nothing like the cramped study closet I'd left behind. Sleek labs, dual monitor setups that made my old refurbished brick look like a calculator, humming servers everywhere. I remember standing there, backpack still slung over one shoulder, blinking at the room and thinking, okay, this is it. This is the playground of the obsessed, the relentless, the people who actually get to build things that matter. Orientation was a blur of introductions, rules, and schedules that made my head spin, but in a good way. The other residents were intense, like sharks in a tank, all buzzing with ideas, prototypes, and code. And me, I felt a strange mix of exhilaration and sheer terror. But underneath it all, anger simmered, a low, persistent hum. Dad sold my laptop. My parents had tried to trap me, sabotage me. And now, here I was, with a workstation so powerful it could almost make up for what they'd stolen. Almost. I threw myself into the work, and it was everything I needed. 4 years of resentment, betrayal, and late nights compressed into an energy that I poured into the screens in front of me. Nights blurred into mornings. Coffee became a lifestyle. My body felt like it was being stretched, tested, and reforged. I didn't go to parties. I didn't date. I barely spoke to anyone outside the lab. I became the code, the algorithms, the predictive models, and slowly, painfully, Things began to click. The predictive AI I had dreamed of during my thesis. Now it wasn't just an idea, it was real. I named it Aegis. It wasn't perfect, not at first, but it was mine. Every line of code carried pieces of those early mornings. The panic, the sense of betrayal, the refusal to be broken. I chuckled to myself sometimes, thinking, wow, all that rage really does fuel something. The other residents would ask me questions, and I'd answer, not just with knowledge, but with that quiet intensity that comes from having something to prove. Not to them, not really, but to myself. Each breakthrough was a little victory, each failed attempt a lesson I wouldn't have learned in a classroom. I started to see patterns, understand weaknesses, predict problems before they happened. The AI evolved alongside me, smarter, sharper, faster. And I realized something else. This was more than coding. This was strategy, resourcefulness, survival. Every obstacle became a challenge to be crushed. Every doubt a reminder of how far I'd already come. Some nights, when the city outside glimmered through the windows, I'd lean back in my chair, hands sore, eyes red, and just smile a little. This was my life, my creation, my revenge, not in the petty sense, but in the satisfying way that comes from taking what they tried to steal and building it bigger, stronger, and smarter than anyone imagined. I even started noticing myself changing sharper, more confident, less willing to tolerate nonsense. There was humor in that too. A little private joke, the girl who left home with nothing but a backpack now running simulations that could predict cyber breaches before they even happened. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of the monitors reflecting in my glasses and think, whoa, that's me. Really me. Not the girl in the closet, not the overworked, underappreciated daughter, but someone who could command technology, build systems, and actually make a difference. Sure, exhaustion was brutal. And yes, the loneliness at times gnawed at the edges, but it was worth it. Every night, the city hummed along, and I hummed with it, letting my anger and focus merge, letting every betrayal fuel the precision and creativity that became Aegis. And slowly, the impossible started to feel achievable. The predictive algorithms weren't just running, they were learning, adapting, becoming something beyond my thesis, beyond my parents' petty sabotage. Aegis became more than a project. It became a statement. Every test I ran, every feature I deployed, every success I marked in the logs was a quiet, unstoppable declaration: I am here. I am more than what they tried to limit me to. And Seattle, this chaotic, rainy, electric city, was the perfect backdrop. I was no longer just surviving. I was thriving, building, creating, and shaping something that mattered. And for the first time in years, I laughed, softly, to myself, because finally, I wasn't defined by what they'd done to me. I was defined by what I could do with it. It was quiet in the office that morning, the kind of silence that makes every email ping feel like a drumbeat in your chest. Then it came a flagged message from my parents, bypassing all filters, marked urgent. I stared at the subject line, Tyler's big news. We need to talk. My hand hovered over the mouse. My first thought was caution. Family emergency. That's dad code for I need something. But curiosity edged out fear. I opened it, and there it was, a request for $5,000 to cover Tyler's engagement party. The words hit me with a surreal punch. No apology for the laptop, No concern for how I was doing. Just an assumption that I was an ATM. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly, trying to separate emotion from thought. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as my brain shifted into problem-solving mode. They'd lied, manipulated, and now they wanted my money for Tyler to impress a rich family. And I wasn't sending it not without understanding exactly what I was dealing with. I started piecing it together, step by step. First, financials I needed to see what their situation really looked like. Second, Tyler, had he even held a job recently? And third, Jessica the fiancée. What did she actually know I called Sarah, my assistant, and laid it all out? I need a private investigator, the best one in the city. Full financial workup on Frank and Susan Miller. Background check on Tyler. Everything you can find. And get me any details on this Jessica person. Sarah didn't ask questions, just typed furiously. The kind of efficiency I relied on to keep my anger in check and my plan precise. While she worked, I leaned back, letting the reality sink in. They'd called me because they were desperate to prop up a narrative, to cover up their failures, to keep up appearances. Tyler, their golden boy, had been living in a bubble of lies, and now they wanted me to fund it. My chest tightened with a mix of controlled anger and satisfaction. I wasn't going to react recklessly. I had the upper hand, I always did. As long as I stayed smart. 48 hours, a dossier, a few late nights, I could piece together the truth. When Mr. Vance, the investigator, delivered the digital files, I felt a quiet satisfaction. I scrolled through their financials, second mortgages, maxed out credit cards, loans, debt piling up in ways they hadn't mentioned. And Tyler, he hadn't held a job in 2 years, but his social media told a different story, posing as a crypto entrepreneur, showing off the gaming rig bought with my laptop money, claiming it was his trading station. I stopped scrolling, jaw tight. He was pretending to be me, or at least pretending to be part of my success. And Jessica, she had no idea. They were all complicit in the lie, consciously or not, except for her. I felt a tight, slow-burning anger, not the panicked, desperate kind from my thesis days, but a calm, calculating intensity. I could see the pieces clearly now, their motives, their desperation, the lengths they'd go to. Susan called while I was reviewing the dossier, voice trembling, trying to play the good cop role. Faith, your father's blood pressure is through the roof. Why are you doing this to us? I didn't flinch. Mom, why does Tyler's fiancé think he's a partner in a tech firm? Silence on the other end, a sharp inhale, and then the truth slipped out. Tyler had told her he helped start up my company. He claimed the seed money, the laptop sale, was his contribution. Susan stammered, trying to justify, cover it all up. I listened, quiet, letting it settle. They weren't just asking for money, they were using me to prop up a deception, to save Tyler's facade, to keep up appearances. And I wasn't going to allow it. Not now. Not ever. I closed the dossier, feeling the weight of control settle in my chest. I could see the entire web of lies, the desperation, the con, and a plan began forming, sharp and deliberate, cutting through the emotional fog. This wasn't just about money, it was about exposing the truth and protecting someone being misled, Jessica. I leaned back in my chair, letting the anger transform into clarity. My parents had underestimated me, assumed my wealth meant blind compliance, but now, with data, evidence, and precision, I could operate with confidence, turning their desperation and deception into a tool to set things straight. Every number, every post, every lie now fueled a methodical sense of justice building inside me. I allowed myself a small, wry smile. They thought they had me, but really, I was the one orchestrating the next move, calm, deliberate, and unstoppable. The country club was exactly as I remembered from the picture's faux colonial architecture. Manicured hedges so precise they could have been sculpted by obsessive gardeners, and an air of desperate exclusivity that clung to every corner. I arrived at 6:15 p.m., just as the sun began to dip, casting long golden shadows across the polished marble and the expansive lawn. Inside, the banquet hall smelled of lilies, candle wax, and expensive fabric. Round tables were draped in crisp white linens, each adorned with towering floral arrangements, the kind that looked like they belonged in a magazine rather than a family event. I paused just inside the door, letting my eyes scan the scene. It was perfection, the illusion of wealth and propriety, but it was a house of lies, and I could see every layer peeling away. Frank was easy to spot first. Tight tuxedo, flushed face, the manic energy of a man pretending his financial house was in order. His eyes darted around, trying to control the chaos of the room, but the energy of the crowd had already begun to spill past his control. Susan clung to a champagne flute like it was a lifeline, sequins glinting under the warm light, her posture rigid and rehearsed, like a statue of a woman who thought she was saving her family's image. And Tyler, well, Tyler was holding court near the bar, polished, tailored suit, laughing at something a gray-haired man was saying. He looked every inch the young, successful entrepreneur, and my chest tightened with a familiar mix of rage and disbelief. He didn't even notice me. Not yet. And that was fine. I let my eyes settle on the woman standing beside him. Jessica. She was beautiful, nervous, her excitement evident in the way she fidgeted with her hands. The slight quiver in her smile. She radiated trust, innocence, unaware of the performance she was part of. My fingers flexed around the edge of the magazine and the thick dossier in my bag. Every step forward was deliberate, measured. The calm before the storm, I smoothed the lapels of my blazer, straightened my shoulders, and stepped fully into the hall. My presence seemed to bend the room's attention in my direction. Not because I demanded it, but because I carried a weight, a confidence that made people notice. Tyler saw me then. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second, the mask slipping before he plastered it back on. "Faith," he boomed, opening his arms. "Everyone, this is my sister, the genius of the family. Faith, come here." He hugged me, patting my back hard, leaning in to whisper, "Play along or I swear to God I'll ruin you." I pulled back, calm, letting him see that threat meant nothing. "Hello, Tyler. Congratulations," I said, voice steady, neutral, polite. I had no intention of playing along. Not tonight. I glanced at Jessica, her eyes bright, innocent, and my heart ached. But this was the moment. I reached into my bag and pulled out the magazine, holding it up just so she could see. Her eyes widened slightly, curiosity flashing. Frank and Susan noticed immediately, tension snapping in their rigid posture. Frank's face tightened, muscles bunching under the tuxedo collar. Susan's hand went to her mouth, a gasp half hidden by the sequins of her glove. I held the magazine aloft. "Mr. Holloway," I said, projecting my voice, calm but firm. "I think you'll find the article on page 42 quite interesting." Tyler's frown deepened, subtle panic flashing across his features. "Faith," he hissed under his breath. "What are you doing?" I ignored him. I flipped the magazine open, just enough for the cover and the highlighted article to be visible. Then I placed the thick dossier on the bar with a definitive thud. The room, already on edge, went still. Forks clinked against plates. The string quartet faltered mid-note. Conversation stuttered and died. Eyes turned. Whispering began. The air charged with anticipation. I turned to Jessica, voice steady, directed only at her. My brother did not fund my company. He has never owned a bond, never invested a cent. 4 years ago, 2 days before my final exams, our fathers sold my laptop, the one with my thesis, to a pawn shop for Tyler's gaming setup. Her eyes went wide, the warmth and trust beginning to drain, replaced by confusion. I continued. "Tyler didn't give me seed money. He took my only tool. He hasn't had a job in 2 years. The trading station he showed you, it's for video games. The money for this party, from selling my laptop. And just 3 days ago, they tried to blackmail me into funding this entire deception." Jessica's lips parted slightly. Disbelief etched across her face. I glanced briefly at Frank, whose hands had clenched into fists at his sides, every muscle taut, rage radiating in waves. Susan shrieked, her voice breaking as she tried to intervene. "She's lying. This is insane. She's unstable." But the room had already shifted. Guests were whispering, leaning forward, scanning the documents. "Mr." Holloway picked up the dossier, flipping pages with practiced speed. "Bank statements, foreclosure notices, Tyler's arrest record. The email thread where Frank had threatened me, it all lay bare in front of him." His eyes darkened, fury and disbelief mingling in a dangerous cocktail. He looked up at Frank, voice low. "Lethal?" "You told me the deposit was covered by a trust fund," he growled. Frank sputtered, his earlier confidence crumbling. It's a liquidity issue. Faith promised. She was supposed to." He couldn't finish. I didn't give him the chance. I let the evidence speak. Tyler's face, usually a mask of bravado, was cracking. Panic seized him, trembling, as he realized the foundation of his story was collapsing. "Babe, don't listen to her," he stammered, reaching for Jessica. She stepped back, firm and unyielding. "Don't touch me," she said flatly, voice deadened with shock. She looked at the magazine again, then the dossier, her fingers trembling slightly as she flipped through the pages. The room fell into a suffocating silence, every guest holding their breath, witnessing the spectacle of truth unraveling in real time. I watched as comprehension dawned on Jessica, horror mixing with relief. She looked up at me, wide-eyed. "You saved me," she whispered. My heart tightened. "Yes," I said softly. "Honestly, he would have drained you dry. But now, Mr." Holloway's face was unreadable for a moment, then his expression softened into respect. He nodded slowly, a silent acknowledgement of integrity, of courage, of standing firm in the face of deceit. He was the first outside of me to recognize the full scale of what had been attempted and what had been prevented. Frank's rage, however, had nowhere to go. He lurched forward as if to strike, voice hoarse with fury. "You ungrateful little." But I didn't flinch. I stepped closer, heels clicking, voice echoing in the suddenly hushed room. "Go ahead, Frank. Sue me. But know this, I have a legal team, recordings, and evidence of your threats and extortion." "You told me to be resourceful," I said, eyes locking with his. "Unyielding? I figured it out. And now, you're going to have to figure out how to pay for this party yourself." His hand dropped, slack, the room collectively exhaling. Susan slumped behind him, sobbing openly. Tyler's bravado had vanished entirely, replaced by fear and helplessness. Guests murmured amongst themselves, the tension palpable. Mr. Holloway, still holding the dossier, looked at the family, then back at me, his presence commanding calm and finality. The engagement was over. The lie was exposed. Jessica, face streaked with tears but standing tall, looked at me with gratitude and newfound trust. I softened, walking toward her. "I'm sorry, Jessica. You didn't deserve this." She shook her head, voice barely above a whisper. "No, but better to know now than after the wedding." And with that, the illusion had shattered. The room, once pristine and imposing, had lost its power. It was just a room full of people exposed, a room where truth had triumphed over pretense, manipulation, and lies. And in that room, amidst the shocked, murmuring crowd, I finally felt the weight lift. The adrenaline ebbed, leaving a trembling exhaustion, but also a quiet, sharp satisfaction. The game was over. The debts settled not in money, but in truth. And as the guests began to process the scene, I realized something profound. I hadn't just won. I had liberated myself and those who deserved it. The room was quiet now, the chaos and tension settling into stunned murmurs and whispered questions. I stood there, letting the moment stretch, letting the weight of what had just happened sink in. Jessica stepped closer, her hands still trembling slightly, but there was clarity in her eyes now, a mix of relief, gratitude, and disbelief. I smiled softly, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the chandelier lights overhead. "I'm sorry you had to be dragged into this," I said, voice calm, steady. "But at least now you know the truth." She nodded, a small, shaky laugh escaping her. "Better now than after the wedding?" "Right." I chuckled. The sound light unburdened. Exactly. For a moment, we just stood there, two people who had survived deception, manipulation, and betrayal, taking a breath in the aftermath around us. The crowd was slowly recovering, whispers turning into conversations, eyes darting between the evidence laid bare on the bar and the stunned expressions of Frank, Susan, and Tyler. I realized the power in that moment, not over them, but over my own life. I hadn't just exposed the truth. I had reclaimed it. I had turned years of frustration, sleepless nights, and the pain of being underestimated into a decisive, liberating act. Every fiber of my being hummed with the knowledge that I was no longer bound by their control, their petty games, or their attempts to manipulate me into compliance. I could feel my body relaxing for the first time in years, the adrenaline ebbing, leaving behind a serene clarity. "You saved me," Jessica whispered again, more to herself than to me. Eyes scanning the dossier and magazine still spread out on the bar. I nodded, my smile softening. Yes. And you're free to make your own decisions now, without him steering your life. That's the real gift. She looked down at the documents, then back at me, eyes glistening with tears and comprehension. There was a quiet dignity in that realization, and I felt proud not just of the strategy, but of protecting someone from the same manipulation I had endured. I lingered for a moment, letting the room feel the presence of truth, letting the lingering tension weigh on my parents and Tyler without needing to add another word. Then, slowly, I straightened, adjusted my blazer, and glanced at the door. The night air outside beckoned. I knew it was time to step away, to leave behind the chaos, the deceit, and the family that had underestimated me for far too long. Walking through the doors into the cool night. The stars above were brighter than I remembered, clearer than they had ever seemed in Seattle. Each step on the pavement felt like reclamation, each breath deep and unburdened. The city was quiet, and yet alive, humming with opportunity, freedom, and the knowledge that I could shape my own life, entirely on my own terms. I felt the leather of my bag strap against my shoulder, the weight light and purposeful, a symbol of everything I carried forward: my skills, my experience, my ambition, and my hard-won independence. I paused for a moment on the curb, looking back at the country club one last time. The facade, the lights, the carefully curated appearances, all of it seemed diminished, powerless against truth and clarity. And in that moment, I understood fully. Liberation wasn't loud or violent. It was quiet, deliberate, and irreversible. I opened the car door, settled in, and took a final deep breath, savoring the release of years of tension. No rage, no panic, just a steady pulse of triumph and calm. I thought about the journey that had brought me here: sleepless nights, lost laptops, deception, betrayal. And yet every challenge had sharpened me, honed my skills, and built the foundation for the life I was living now. The city lights blurred past as I drove, the engine's hum matching the rhythm of my heartbeat, steady and strong. Resourcefulness, determination, and the courage to stand up for oneself. These were the true tools that had carried me, not luck, not favors, not false promises. I allowed myself a quiet smile, reflecting on how far I'd come. I had navigated deceit, exposed lies, and protected someone else in the process. I had left the past behind, fully and decisively. And now, the future stretched ahead, bright, open, and mine to shape. The lesson lingered in my mind, a subtle reminder: strength isn't just in talent or opportunity, it's in recognizing when to act, when to step forward, and when to walk away from those who would try to hold you back. I felt light, unencumbered, free. My path was my own, and for the first time, fully and completely, I believed in the life I could create. The night air filled my lungs, cool and invigorating, carrying away the last remnants of fear and uncertainty. I looked up at the stars once more, letting their clarity and brilliance mirror the clarity in my own mind. With a calm smile, I started the engine, ready to move forward, ready to embrace everything I had worked for and everything I would continue to build. This wasn't just an ending, it was the beginning of a life defined by independence, integrity, and the knowledge that I could always figure things out on my own terms. And just like that, faith turned betrayal into triumph, proving that resourcefulness and determination can rewrite your story. From losing everything to building an empire and standing up to her family, she showed what it means to take control of your own life. Pretty inspiring, right? If this story made you think about independence, resilience, or just surviving against the odds, drop a comment to share your thoughts. Stick around too, there are plenty more stories where courage and cleverness change everything.